At her birthday party, her rich divorced husband slapped her, but her laugh and a shocking gift made. The slap echoed across the rooftop like a gunshot. Conversation stopped. Glasses froze halfway to lips. 200 people watched Daniel's hand connect with Monique's cheek, watched her champagne glass shatter against the concrete. Have you ever fallen for someone completely wrong for you? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She stood in the golden glow of Atlanta's most exclusive rooftop, champagne in hand, watching her ex-husband's empire about to crumble with one small velvet box. The string lights cast warm shadows over 200 of the South's most powerful faces. Senators laughed with real estate moguls. Tech billionaires clinked glasses with old money families. Everyone who mattered in Georgia was here for Monique's 35th birthday celebration. None of them saw it coming. Daniel adjusted his Armani tie, scanning the crowd like he owned every soul on that rooftop. At 48, he still commanded attention, silver at his temples, shoulders that filled out his custom suit perfectly. But tonight, something was different in his dark eyes. Fear. Monique moved through the party like liquid gold in her backless dress. Her skin glowed against the bronze fabric. Her natural curls swept up to show the diamond earrings that had once been his anniversary gift. She smiled at every guest, posed for every photo, played the perfect hostess. But her eyes never left Daniel. Have you ever wanted revenge so badly you could taste it? What would you do if someone humiliated you in front of everyone who mattered? The champagne toast was supposed to be Daniel's moment. He'd planned it for weeks, a public reconciliation, a chance to show Atlanta society that he could win back the woman who'd walked out on their wedding. His reputation depended on it. His business deals required it. Instead, it became his execution. To Monique, Daniel raised his glass, voice carrying across the rooftop. The most beautiful woman in Atlanta, and the biggest mistake I ever made was letting her go. The crowd murmured approval. Cameras flashed. Society reporters scribbled notes. Monique stepped forward, her heels clicking on the polished concrete. Thank you, Daniel. That's very sweet. Her voice was honey over broken glass. But there's something I need to share with everyone tonight. She reached into her designer clutch, fingers finding the small velvet box she'd carried for 3 months. Waiting, planning. The USB drive inside contained enough evidence to destroy every corrupt deal, every illegal transaction, every dirty secret Daniel had built his fortune on. Happy birthday to me, she said, sliding the box across the cocktail table. But tonight, the gift is for the world. Daniel's face went white as he opened it. His hands shook as he stared at the drive, understanding exactly what it meant. Around them, the party continued, guests unaware that they were witnessing the end of an empire. That's when he lost control. The slap echoed across the rooftop like a gunshot. Conversation stopped. Glasses froze halfway to lips. 200 people watched Daniel's hand connect with Monique's cheek, watched her champagne glass shatter against the concrete. But instead of tears, instead of shock, Monique laughed. Deep, rich, unsettling. The sound made grown men step backward. It made senators' wives clutch their pearls. It made every person on that rooftop understand that they were witnessing something far more dangerous than a domestic dispute. They were watching a reckoning. Daniel, Monique touched her cheek, still smiling. You always did have a temper. Too bad everyone's recording tonight. She was right. Dozens of phones were already out, red recording lights blinking like tiny stars. Social media notifications were starting to buzz. The slap was going viral before Daniel even realized what he'd done. As Monique walked toward the elevator, her heels clicking a steady rhythm, Daniel's phone exploded with alerts. The first news notification was already live. Atlanta real estate mogul's ex-wife drops bombshell at birthday party. But that was nothing compared to what would happen when the drive's contents went public in 24 hours. 3 years earlier, she was a night shift nurse who made him coffee at 3 a.m., and he was the man who promised her the world before he tried to own it. Charlotte, North Carolina, 2021. Presbyterian Hospital's emergency wing never slept, but at 3 in the morning, even chaos felt tired. Monique pulled her scrubs tighter against the October chill as she headed to the break room, her 12-hour shift only half over. The coffee maker gurgled like an old friend. She made this same pot 1,000 times, adding extra sugar because the night shift needed all the comfort it could get. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Maya. "Rent's due tomorrow. Can you cover my half again?" Always something. Always someone needing her to be stronger, work harder, sacrifice more. That's when she first saw him. Daniel sat in the family waiting area, still wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than her monthly salary. His bow tie hung loose around his neck, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. He looked lost in a way that expensive clothes couldn't hide. "You okay?" The words left her mouth before she could stop them. She'd learned to spot the ones who needed more than medical attention. They needed someone to see them as human. He looked up with eyes that were bloodshot but grateful. "My business partner had a heart attack during our charity gala. I've been here for 6 hours, and nobody will tell me anything because I'm not family." Monique glanced at the clock, then at his face. Something about his pain felt real, not like the entitled demand she usually got from wealthy patients' families. "I can check on him," she offered. "What's his name?" "Robert Chun. He's like a father to me." Have you ever fallen for someone completely wrong for you? Someone who felt like destiny, but turned into destruction? 20 minutes later, she found Daniel in that same chair, but now he was crying. Quiet tears that he tried to hide behind manicured hands. "Mr. Chun is stable," she said, sitting beside him. "The doctors expect a full recovery." The relief that washed over his face was beautiful and heartbreaking. "Thank you. I don't even know your name." "Monique. And you don't have to thank me for doing my job." "Daniel." He held out his hand, and when she shook it, something electric passed between them. "And this wasn't your job. This was kindness." They talked until sunrise. About her dreams of traveling, his fear of becoming his distant father, her plans to become a nurse practitioner, his guilt about inherited wealth. By the time her shift ended, she'd learned that Daniel Chun had built his fortune from nothing, that he donated millions to children's hospitals, that he remembered every employee's name at his company. He seemed different from every rich man she'd ever encountered. Real, vulnerable. Their first date was coffee at a diner near the hospital. He showed up in jeans and a t-shirt, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. They sat in a corner booth for 4 hours, talking about everything and nothing. Their first kiss happened in the hospital parking garage 2 weeks later. She was ending another night's shift, exhausted and stressed about her student loans, when he appeared with coffee and that smile that made her forget how tired she was. "You don't have to keep bringing me coffee," she said, accepting the cup gratefully. "I know." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with the October air. "I want to." When his lips touched hers, gentle and questioning, she felt something she'd never experienced before. Not just attraction, but possibility. Like maybe she could have more than just survival. The parking garage was cold and concrete, but his hands were warm on her face, and for the first time in years, Monique allowed herself to want something just for herself. "I should go," she whispered against his mouth, not moving away. "Should," he agreed, but his thumb traced her bottom lip. "But do you want to?" She didn't, and that terrified her more than anything. When he offered to pay off her nursing school loans on their third date, warning bells should have screamed. Instead, all she heard was the sound of doors opening to a life she'd only dreamed of. She thought moving to Atlanta meant building a life together. She didn't realize he was building a cage with golden bars. The Buckhead penthouse had floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased all of Atlanta like a glittering promise. 29 floors up, the city looked manageable, beautiful, full of possibility. Monique stood at those windows every morning with her coffee, watching the sun rise over a life that still felt borrowed. 6 months since leaving Charlotte. 4 months since quitting nursing. 3 months since Daniel proposed. And 2 weeks since she'd started feeling like a prisoner in paradise. "Babe, you ready?" Daniel's voice carried from their bedroom, all business despite the early hour. He had a development meeting in Midtown, something about luxury condos that would transform the neighborhood character. Monique had learned not to ask too many questions about his work. She'd also learned that Daniel's version of building a life together meant building his vision of what their life should look like. The closet he'd stocked for her held designer dresses in colors he preferred. The social calendar on their shared iPad was filled with events he'd chosen. Even their weekend trips were destinations that served his networking goals. "Almost ready," she called back, selecting a navy blue dress that screamed appropriate real estate mogul's fiancé. The woman in the mirror looked polished, expensive, perfect. She didn't look like Monique anymore. When does love become control? Have you ever sacrificed your identity for someone else's vision of who you should be? The charity luncheon they attended that afternoon was held at the Atlanta History Center, all white tablecloths and careful conversations. Monique sat beside Daniel, smiling at the right moments, laughing at unfunny jokes from men who measured women by their husbands' bank accounts. "Daniel's fiancée is lovely," she heard Mrs. Patterson whisper to her table mate. "So exotic, like she was a vacation destination instead of a person." Monique worked as a nurse, Daniel said proudly, his hand finding hers. "She has such a caring heart." Worked, past tense, like caring was something she used to do instead of something she was. After lunch, they toured Daniel's latest project, a block of renovated townhouses in the Old Fourth Ward. The neighborhood was gentrifying fast, historic black communities being pushed out by developers who saw dollar signs where families had built generations. "These units will start at $4,000 a month," Daniel explained to his investors as they walked through a model home. "We're targeting young professionals who want urban living with suburban safety." Translation: wealthy white renters who wanted black culture without black neighbors. Monique watched an elderly woman across the street watering plants on her porch, probably wondering how much longer she'd be able to afford living in her own neighborhood. The woman's house needed repairs that Daniel's company would never fund, improvements that would never come because maintaining affordable housing didn't generate enough profit. "What do you think, sweetheart?" Daniel's question pulled her back to the group. Everyone was looking at her, waiting for the supportive fiancé to praise his vision. But all she could think about was that woman's weathered hands, the careful way she tended her small garden like it was the most precious thing in the world. "It's very nice," she managed. "Very clean." That night, in their penthouse bedroom, Daniel pulled her close with hands that demanded rather than requested. His touch had changed over the months, becoming more possessive, more about ownership than affection. "You seem distracted today," he said, his mouth against her neck. But it wasn't a question, it was an accusation. "Just tired," she lied, letting him guide her backward toward their king-sized bed. Their lovemaking had become another performance, another role she was expected to play. The passionate nurse who'd fallen for the successful businessman. The grateful woman being elevated from her simple life to something grand. But as Daniel moved above her, his eyes closed in pleasure, Monique found herself staring at the ceiling, counting the recessed lights like stars she couldn't reach. Afterward, as he slept beside her, she slipped out of bed and returned to those windows. Atlanta spread out below, millions of lights representing millions of lives. People working night shifts like she used to, people worrying about rent like her sister still did, people building real things instead of just buying and selling and moving money around. She pressed her palm against the cool glass and wondered when she'd stop feeling like herself. The private investigator's business card fell from Daniel's jacket pocket as she hung up his suit the next morning. His name, Marcus Webb. The question that kept her awake: why was her fiancé having her followed? The engagement ring was beautiful, but the invisible strings attached made it feel like a shackle she couldn't remove. The Cherokee Town and Country Club sat on manicured grounds that screamed old money and older prejudices. Monique's engagement party was being held in the main ballroom, all crystal chandeliers and portraits of Confederate generals that nobody talked about but everybody noticed. She stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the gilt-framed mirror. The Vera Wang dress Daniel had chosen fit perfectly, but it felt like wearing someone else's skin. Her engagement ring caught the light, 3 carats of flawless diamond that probably cost more than most people's cars. Beautiful chains were still chains. "You look stunning, dear." Mrs. Caldwell emerged from a stall, adjusting her pearls. She was old Atlanta money, the kind of woman who said, "Bless your heart," like a weapon. Daniel is so lucky to have found someone so adaptable. Adaptable, another word for erasing herself to fit their world. The party was in full swing when Monique returned to the ballroom. 200 of Atlanta's most influential people mingled with champagne and careful smiles. Daniel worked the room like a politician, his hand always finding the small of her back, marking territory. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called for attention, tapping his glass with a silver knife. "I want to thank you all for celebrating with us tonight." Monique smiled on cue, her face aching from hours of performance. "Monique has brought such joy to my life," Daniel continued, his arm sliding around her waist. "She's shown me what it means to love someone completely." The crowd applauded. Someone shouted, "Hear, hear." Camera phones captured the moment for social media posts about Atlanta's power couple. But Monique was watching the servers, all black women her age, moving invisibly through the crowd. Women who looked like her cousins, her neighbors from Charlotte, her former self. Women who cleaned up after the people who owned everything while earning barely enough to survive. Have you ever smiled through pain at a party? Pretended everything was perfect when your world was falling apart? "I need some air," she whispered to Daniel during the dinner service. His grip on her hand tightened. "The speeches haven't started yet. Just 5 minutes." "Monique." His voice carried a warning that made her stomach clench. People are watching. People were always watching. Their relationship had become a public performance, where she was the supporting actress in a starring role. She excused herself anyway, slipping out onto the terrace where the October air was crisp and honest. The country club's grounds stretched toward the city lights, manicured perfection that hid so many ugly truths. Needed a break too? She turned to find Marcus Webb leaning against the stone railing. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and a rumpled suit that suggested he shopped at normal stores instead of designer boutiques. "You're the private investigator," she said. It wasn't a question. "Guilty." He held up his hands. "But before you call security, you should know I'm not here to spy on you. I'm here to warn you." Her heart started racing. "Warn me about what?" "Your fiancé isn't who you think he is." Marcus pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents. "The housing developments, the charity work, the public image, it's all covering up something much worse." She shouldn't take the folder. Shouldn't listen to a stranger making accusations about the man she was supposed to marry in 6 weeks. But her hands were already reaching for it. "He's been systematically buying properties in low-income neighborhoods." Marcus continued, his voice urgent. "Not to improve them, but to let them deteriorate until the families can't afford to stay. Then he evicts them, demolishes everything, and sells the land to developers for luxury projects." The folder felt heavy in her hands. That's legal, isn't it?" "Legal doesn't mean right. He's displacing families who've lived in these communities for generations. And that's not even the worst part." Inside the ballroom, she could hear Daniel's voice growing louder, probably wondering where she'd gone. "What's the worst part?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Tomorrow morning, he's targeting a community in Charlotte, near Presbyterian Hospital." Marcus's eyes were grave. "He's going to destroy the neighborhood where you used to work, where families like yours are still trying to survive." The engagement ring felt like it was burning her finger. Overhearing Daniel's phone call about cleaning up the mess before the wedding made her blood run cold. But it was his next words that changed everything. "Make sure Monique never finds out about the Jefferson Street property." She started digging into his business to understand her future. Instead, she uncovered crimes that could destroy both their lives. Monique's hands shook as she opened Daniel's laptop in their home office at 2 a.m. He was in Charleston for a business meeting that was probably another community about to be gentrified into oblivion. The password was her birthday, a romantic gesture that now felt like mockery. The Jefferson Street property file was easy to find once she knew what to look for. Spreadsheets full of addresses, demolition schedules, profit projections. But it was the email thread with city officials that made her blood run cold. Make sure the inspections find enough violations to justify condemnation, Daniel had written to someone named Commissioner Hayes. The families need to be out by December 1st. Christmas evictions get less media attention. Christmas evictions. She kept reading, her horror growing with each document. Daniel wasn't just displacing families. He was actively making their homes unlivable, cutting off water during repairs, allowing break-ins by refusing to fix security, creating conditions so terrible that people had no choice but to leave. The worst part was the efficiency of it, the calculated cruelty disguised as business strategy. Would you rather live in luxury built on lies or struggle with the truth? What price would you pay for your conscience? Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Can we meet? Found something you need to see. They met at a 24-hour diner in East Atlanta, the kind of place where truckers and night shift workers grab coffee before dawn. Marcus looked like he hadn't slept in days, his shirt wrinkled and his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. You were right, Monique said, sliding into the booth across from him. About the Jefferson Street property. About all of it. I wish I wasn't. Marcus pushed a new folder across the table. But it gets worse. Much worse. This folder contained photographs. Surveillance shots of Daniel meeting with men in expensive suits outside courthouses, city halls, police stations. Money changing hands in parking garages. Handshakes that looked more like deals with the devil. Your fiancé isn't just displacing families, Marcus said, his voice low. He's paying off officials to make it happen. Building inspectors, zoning commissioners, even some judges. He's got half of Atlanta's government in his pocket. Monique stared at a photo of Daniel handing an envelope to a man she recognized from the news. A city councilman who'd been crusading for affordable housing while apparently taking bribes to destroy it. Why are you showing me this? She asked. Why do you care? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup like it held answers. My sister Maya lived in one of the first communities Daniel targeted. She was a single mother, working 2 jobs, saving money to buy her little house. Was, past tense. Daniel's people made her life hell for 8 months. Broken pipes that never got fixed. Heat that mysteriously stopped working in January. Drug dealers who suddenly started hanging around after the security lights went out. Marcus's jaw tightened. She held on as long as she could, but when her daughter started getting sick from the mold, what happened to her? She moved in with our parents in a 1-bedroom apartment across town. Lost her support system, her community, her sense of home. Started drinking to cope with the depression. Marcus met her eyes. She died in a car accident 6 months later. Blood alcohol 3 times the legal limit. The diner's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Monique tried to process what she was hearing. Daniel hadn't just stolen communities, he destroyed lives. And she was about to legally bind herself to him. I became a private investigator to help families like my sister's, Marcus continued, to gather evidence against landlords and developers who prey on people who can't fight back. Your fiancé is the worst I've ever seen. What do you want from me? Help me stop him. Marcus leaned forward, intensity burning in his dark eyes. You have access to his files, his contacts, his plans. Together, we can gather enough evidence to bring him down. And if we get caught, then we both probably end up dead. The words hung between them like a loaded gun. Monique thought about the woman across the street from Daniel's townhouse project, watering her plants with hands that had probably worked their whole lives. She thought about Marcus's sister, driven to despair by a man who saw human suffering as acceptable collateral damage. She thought about the woman she used to be, the nurse who stayed late to comfort scared patients, who sent money home to help her family, who believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard. Okay, she said, what do we do first? Marcus handed her a small recording device, no bigger than a button. Give me his next conversation with Commissioner Hayes. But be careful, Monique. If Daniel suspects you know anything, he didn't need to finish the sentence. She'd seen what Daniel did to people who got in his way. Marcus handed her the file with shaking hands. Your fiancé isn't just discriminating against black families, he whispered. He's actively destroying their homes to flip the land. And tomorrow, he's targeting your old neighborhood in Charlotte. Standing at the altar in her grandmother's pearls, she realized the man waiting for her wasn't the one she'd fallen in love with. He was a stranger wearing his face. The historic Swan House looked like something from a fairy tale. White roses climbed the marble columns, and golden sunlight streamed through tall windows on 300 guests dressed in their finest clothes. Everything was perfect: the music, the flowers, the photographer capturing every moment for Atlanta Society magazines. Everything except the bride's heart. Monique stood in the bridal suite, staring at herself in the antique mirror. Her grandmother's pearls felt heavy around her neck, a weight of tradition and expectation she wasn't sure she could carry. The dress was stunning, silk and lace that cost more than most people's yearly salary. But it felt like a costume for a role she no longer wanted to play. "You look beautiful, baby girl." Her mother adjusted the veil with careful hands, tears already threatening her makeup. "Your grandmother would be so proud, would she?" Monique wondered. Grandma Rose had worked 3 jobs to keep her family fed, had fought for every opportunity, had never backed down from doing what was right. Would she really be proud of her granddaughter marrying a man who destroyed communities like the one that raised them? The recording device Marcus had given her was hidden in her bouquet, still gathering evidence from Daniel's phone calls. Last night's conversation with Commissioner Hayes had been damning. Detailed plans to condemn 12 more properties before Christmas, forcing out 43 families just in time for the holidays. Have you ever had to choose between love and your values? Between comfort and conscience? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. 5 minutes, Miss Monique, the wedding coordinator called out. 5 minutes until she promised to love, honor, and cherish a man who saw human suffering as acceptable business costs. The walk down the aisle felt endless. Daniel stood at the altar in his custom tuxedo, looking like every woman's dream of a successful husband. His smile was confident, possessive, like he was about to claim a prize he'd been working toward for months. The guests rose as she passed, faces she'd learned to recognize from charity galas and business dinners. Senators and judges and commissioners, some of whom, she now knew, were taking Daniel's money to look the other way while families lost their homes. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, his voice carrying across the chapel. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Daniel and Monique in holy matrimony." Holy, the word felt like a joke. Monique tried to focus on the ceremony, but her mind kept drifting to the files hidden in their home office. The spreadsheets calculating profit from other people's pay. The emails discussing demolition schedules like they were weather reports instead of life-destroying events. "Do you, Daniel, take Monique to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Edo. His voice was strong, certain, like he was closing a business deal. "Do you, Monique, take Daniel to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The chapel fell silent. 300 people waited for her answer. Cameras focused on her face. Her mother clasped her hands together in prayer. But all Monique could see was Marcus's sister Maya, driven to despair by the man standing beside her. All she could hear were the voices of families pleading with inspectors who'd already been bought and paid for. She started, then stopped. Daniel's eyes flashed with something dangerous. A warning that reminded her of all the ways he could destroy her if she embarrassed him in front of everyone who mattered in his world. "I can't," she whispered. Then louder, "I can't do this." The chapel erupted. Gasps and whispers and the rapid clicking of camera phones. Her mother's shocked cry. Daniel's face turning red with humiliation and rage. Monique lifted her dress and ran. Down the aisle, past the shocked faces and open mouths. Past the reporters who were already reaching for their phones. Past her mother's heartbroken expression and Daniel's murderous glare. She ran until she reached the parking lot, her designer shoes clicking on the asphalt, her veil streaming behind her like a surrender flag. "Monique!" Daniel's voice roared across the parking lot. He'd followed her, his tuxedo jacket abandoned, his perfect hair disheveled. She turned to face him, still in her wedding dress, but finally feeling like herself again. "You'll regret this," he said, his voice low and deadly. "I'll make sure you have nothing left. No job, no credit, no future. I'll destroy everything you care about." "Like you destroyed Maya?" she asked. "Like you're destroying those families in Charlotte?" His face went white. For a moment, she saw fear flicker in his eyes, the realization that she knew more than he'd thought. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said, but his voice shook. "Jefferson Street, Commissioner Hayes, 43 families losing their homes before Christmas." Each word hit him like a physical blow. "I know exactly what I'm talking about." Daniel stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with sweat and desperation. "If you think you can threaten me..." "I'm not threatening you, Daniel." Monique met his eyes without flinching. "I'm leaving you, and if you try to hurt me or anyone I care about, I'll make sure every newspaper in Atlanta knows exactly what kind of man you really are." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in his ruined tuxedo while wedding guests poured out of the chapel behind him. As wedding guests watched in shock, Monique lifted her dress and walked out of the chapel. But Daniel's whispered threat followed her. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure you have nothing left." Losing everything taught her the difference between being broken and being free, and freedom was worth more than all his money. The studio apartment in Virginia Highland was a far cry from the Buckhead penthouse. 400 square feet, a Murphy bed, and a kitchen the size of Daniel's former walk-in closet. But when Monique woke up each morning to sunlight streaming through windows she could actually afford, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. 6 weeks since the wedding that wasn't. 3 weeks since she'd started working at Grady Hospital again, pulling 12-hour shifts in the ER where every emergency felt manageable compared to the disaster her life had become. Daniel had kept his promises about destroying her financially. Her credit cards were canceled within hours of walking out on the wedding. The joint bank account emptied. The car he'd bought her repossessed. Even her phone plan had been terminated, leaving her disconnected from the world he'd built around them. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He thought taking away his money would break her. Instead, it reminded her who she was before she'd let him reshape her into his image of the perfect wife. When has starting over felt like salvation instead of failure? When has less felt like more? Monique Davis, bed 3, needs vitals. The charge nurse's voice cut through her thoughts, pulling her back to the organized chaos of the emergency room. Bed 3 held an elderly man clutching his chest, his wife holding his hand with the desperate grip of someone watching their world fall apart. Monique had seen that look in the mirror for months, the fear of losing everything that mattered. "Mr. Johnson, I'm Monique, your nurse tonight." She checked his pulse, steady but elevated, then met his worried eyes. "Tell me what's been going on." "Chest pain started about an hour ago," he said, his voice tight with discomfort. "We were watching the news, saw that story about families getting evicted from their homes, and it just hit me. Reminded me of when we almost lost our house back in the 80s. His wife squeezed his hand tighter. "We lived in fear for months, wondering if we'd have anywhere to go. Stress like that does things to your body." Monique knew exactly what kind of stress they meant. The story on the news had been about Daniel's latest project, the Jefferson Street properties. 12 families forced out just before Thanksgiving, their belongings piled on sidewalks while demolition crews waited to tear down generations of memories. "The EKG looks good," she told them after running the test. "Dr. Martinez wants to keep you overnight for observation, but your heart is strong." "Thank you, sweetheart." Mrs. Johnson squeezed her arm. "You remind me of my granddaughter. She's studying to be a nurse too. Wants to help people like you do." Help people. When was the last time someone had described her that way? For months, she'd been decoration, a beautiful accessory to Daniel's successful image. Here, she was useful again. Necessary. Herself. Her phone buzzed during her break. A text from an unknown number. "Coffee tomorrow? We need to talk." Marcus. They met at Flying Biscuit in Candler Park, a world away from the sterile luxury of Daniel's usual haunts. Marcus looked different too. More relaxed, like seeing Daniel's empire starting to crack had lifted some weight from his shoulders. "You look good," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. "Different. Poor but happy, she laughed, meaning it. Amazing how much lighter you feel when you're not carrying someone else's guilt. Speaking of guilt, Marcus pulled out a tablet, swiping to a news article. Daniel's been busy since you left. The headline made her stomach clench. Real estate mogul's ex-fiancé undergoes mental health evaluation. The article painted her as unstable, claiming she'd suffered a breakdown at their wedding and was seeking professional help for delusions about her former partner. He's trying to discredit you, Marcus said. Make sure nobody believes anything you might say about his business practices. Will it work? Maybe. Money talks loud in this city. Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice. But I've been gathering more evidence. Financial records, recorded conversations, testimony from displaced families. We're building a real case against him. If you're still willing to help. His dark eyes were serious, intense. I know you've already sacrificed a lot, but Daniel's not going to stop. Every day we wait, more families lose their homes. Monique thought about Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, the way their fear of losing everything had literally made his heart race. She thought about Marcus's sister Maya, driven to drink by despair that could have been prevented. She thought about every family being crushed under Daniel's greed, while Atlanta's elite applauded his urban development at charity galas. What do you need me to do? Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. There's a storage unit Daniel rents under a fake company name. Financial documents going back 5 years, communications with city officials, evidence of bribes and kickbacks. But it's protected by biometric locks. Fingerprint scanners. Your prints are still in his system from when you were engaged. If we can get you inside. When? Tonight. The storage facility sat in an industrial district south of the city, surrounded by chain-link fences and security cameras that Marcus had somehow disabled. Monique's hands shook as she approached the unit, remembering the last time she'd broken into Daniel's private spaces. The scanner beeped and the lock clicked open. Inside were filing cabinets full of documents that could destroy half of Atlanta's political establishment. Bank records showing payments to judges. Contracts with demolition companies that included expedited resident removal. Communications with police officials about looking the other way during property transitions. This is enough to put him away for decades, Marcus whispered, photographing everything with rapid efficiency. But it was the last file that made Monique's blood run cold. A list of future targets. Properties Daniel planned to acquire and clear. At the top of the list was Grady Hospital's affordable housing complex, where many of her coworkers lived. Her new world was about to become his next victim. The envelope under her door contained photos of Daniel with a teenage girl. Marcus's note was simple. This isn't just about housing fraud anymore. We need to talk. She thought the worst thing Daniel could do was steal her money, until she discovered what he was stealing from children. The photos scattered across Marcus's kitchen table told a story that made Monique's stomach turn. Daniel at expensive restaurants with girls who looked barely 18. Daniel handing envelopes to men in suits outside what looked like private schools. Daniel entering buildings that Marcus had labeled as recruitment centers. How long has this been going on? Monique asked, her voice barely a whisper. At least 3 years, based on what I can prove. Marcus sat across from her, his face grim. Maybe longer. He's been using his real estate empire as a front for something much worse. The apartment was small and cluttered, every surface covered with surveillance equipment, documents, and photographs. This wasn't just investigation anymore, it was war. The housing displacement was just the beginning, Marcus continued. He targets vulnerable families, forces them out of stable communities, then offers opportunities to their teenage daughters. Modeling contracts, internships, college scholarships that don't exist. Monique picked up one of the photos with trembling hands. A girl who couldn't be more than 16, wearing expensive clothes she clearly wasn't comfortable in, standing next to Daniel outside the Ritz-Carlton. Her smile was forced, her eyes empty. "This girl looks familiar," she said. Keisha Williams. Her family was evicted from the Jefferson Street property 2 months ago. She's been missing for 6 weeks. How far would you go to protect innocent people? What would you risk to stop someone you once loved? Missing. Her mother filed a police report, but nothing happened. Turns out the detective assigned to the case is on Daniel's payroll. Marcus pulled out another file. There are 7 girls total, all from families Daniel displaced, all between 15 and 18, all reported missing by parents who were told their daughters were troubled runaways. Monique felt sick. She'd shared a bed with this man. She'd planned to spend her life with him. How had she missed something so monstrous? "I need to show you something else," Marcus said, his voice even more serious. "But it's going to be hard to watch." He opened his laptop and clicked on a video file. Security camera footage from what looked like a hotel hallway. The timestamp showed it was recorded 8 months ago during their engagement. Daniel appeared on screen, followed by 2 men in expensive suits and a girl who couldn't have been older than 17. She was crying, trying to pull away, but the men held her arms firmly as Daniel opened a hotel room door. Monique ran to the bathroom and threw up. When she returned, Marcus was waiting with a glass of water and an expression of infinite sadness. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said, "but you needed to understand what we're really fighting." "How many?" she asked. "We don't know. Could be dozens. Could be hundreds. He's been building this network for years, using legitimate businesses to hide trafficking operations." Monique thought about all the charity galas she'd attended, all the speeches Daniel had given about helping at-risk youth, all the donations he'd made to organizations that were supposed to protect children. It had all been cover for stealing childhoods. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "Why not go straight to the FBI?" "Because half the people who should be investigating him are taking his money. We need irrefutable evidence, and we need someone on the inside who can help us gather it. I'm not on the inside anymore." "No, but you know how he thinks. You know his patterns, his contacts, his weaknesses." Marcus leaned forward, intensity burning in his dark eyes. "And there's something else, something personal." He pulled out a photograph that made her heart stop. Her sister Maya, the one who was always asking for rent money, always struggling to make ends meet. In the photo, she was talking to one of Daniel's associates outside a coffee shop near her apartment in Charlotte. "He's targeting your family," Marcus said. "Your sister's been meeting with his recruiters for 2 weeks." "No." The word came out as a sob. "Maya's 23. She's not a child. She's young, desperate, and naive. Perfect victim for someone like Daniel." Marcus's voice was gentle but urgent. "They've offered her a job in Atlanta, supposedly working for a marketing company. She's supposed to start next week." Monique grabbed her phone, dialing Maya's number with shaking fingers. It went straight to voicemail. "Her phone's been off for 3 days, Marcus said. "I think she's already here." The room felt like it was spinning. Daniel wasn't just a corrupt businessman or even a predator. He was using his knowledge of Monique's family to hurt the people she loved most. This was personal, targeted revenge for embarrassing him at their wedding. "What do we do?" she asked. "We find your sister before it's too late, and then we burn his entire operation to the ground." Marcus stood up, moving to a wall covered with maps, photos, and connecting strings like something from a detective movie. "Daniel has 3 main locations where he keeps the girls. A penthouse downtown, a house in Brookhaven, and a warehouse complex near the airport." "How do you know all this?" "Because I've been hunting him for 2 years, ever since my sister died." Marcus turned to face her, and she saw something dangerous in his expression. "But I've been doing it alone, gathering evidence for a case that might never see a courtroom. You're offering me something different." "What?" "The chance to save people instead of just documenting their destruction." Monique looked at the photographs scattered across the table. Girls who looked like her cousins, her student from nursing school, herself at that age. Young women whose futures had been stolen by a man she'd once loved. "Okay," she said, "but we do this my way." "What's your way?" "We don't just gather evidence. We get those girls out first. All of them. And then we make sure Daniel never hurts anyone again." Marcus smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, it wasn't sad. It was predatory. "I was hoping you'd say that." The USB drive contained more than financial records. It held video evidence of Daniel's associates at a private party. But the timestamp showed it was recorded the night before their wedding. He'd been planning this all along. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but justice burns hot. and she was about to serve both at the same table. Planning a rescue mission from Marcus's cramped apartment felt surreal. Maps of Atlanta spread across every surface, surveillance photos pinned to walls, and enough electronic equipment to run a small television station. Monique sat in the middle of it all, learning to become someone she'd never imagined, a woman willing to break laws to save lives. "The warehouse is our best bet," Marcus said, pointing to aerial photos of an industrial complex near Hartsfield Airport. "Lighter security, multiple exit routes, and, according to my sources, that's where they keep the newer girls before moving them to more permanent locations." Sources? Former employees with consciences. Cleaning staff who see too much. Security guards who got tired of being paid to look the other way. Marcus's network was bigger than she'd realized. Not everyone in the city is for sale. They've been planning for 3 weeks, ever since discovering Maya was missing. 3 weeks of surveillance, gathering intelligence, and learning that Daniel's operation was bigger and more sophisticated than either of them had imagined. Have you ever had to pretend to be someone you're not to protect others? How did you find the strength? "The birthday party is perfect cover," Monique said, studying the guest list they'd compiled. "Half of Atlanta's power structure will be there, including most of the officials on Daniel's payroll. While everyone's watching me perform the role of bitter ex-fiancé, you'll have access to the warehouse. It's dangerous," Marcus warned. "If Daniel suspects what you're really doing, he won't. He thinks he knows me, the nice nurse who couldn't handle his world. He has no idea what I'm capable of when someone threatens my family." The woman staring back at her from Marcus's bathroom mirror was a stranger. Gone was the polite society fiancé who'd smiled through months of charity galas. In her place stood someone harder, more focused, with eyes that held secrets Daniel would never guess. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Heard you might want to celebrate your birthday in style." "My treat, D." The invitation to her own birthday party. How generous of him. "He's taking the bait," she told Marcus, showing him the message. "Are you sure you want to do this? Once you walk into that party, there's no going back." Monique thought about Keisha Williams, missing for 6 weeks. About her sister Maya, whose phone had been silent for almost a month. About all the girls whose faces stared back at her from Marcus's wall of evidence. I'm sure the next 2 weeks were a careful dance of preparation. Monique had to convince Daniel she was exactly what he expected, broken, desperate, willing to play nice for the chance to return to her old life. She sent carefully crafted text, messages expressing regret about the wedding, hinting that she missed the comfort his money provided. His responses were patronizing and cruel, but they worked. He believed she was crawling back to him, too weak to survive on her own. Meanwhile, Marcus was positioning assets around the warehouse. Former police officers disgusted by corruption. Social workers tired of seeing cases disappear. Even some of Daniel's former employees who'd grown sick of what they were helping to hide. "The key is timing," Marcus explained during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "We need to coordinate the warehouse rescue with your party distraction. If we move too early, Daniel will know something's wrong. Too late, and he might move the girls. What about the USB drive? That's a nuclear option. But remember, once you reveal that evidence publicly, there's no taking it back. Daniel will know you've been working against him, and he'll do everything he can to destroy you before the authorities can act." Monique fingered the small velvet box in her purse, feeling the weight of the drive inside. Months of evidence gathering, weeks of planning, all leading to this moment. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Daniel's name on the screen. "Hello, beautiful." His voice was smooth, confident. "Looking forward to tomorrow night?" "Of course," she said, letting just enough vulnerability creep into her tone. "Thank you for doing this, Daniel. I know I don't deserve it after what happened at the wedding. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is learning from them." His patronizing tone made her skin crawl. "I've missed you, Monique. We were good together." "We were," she agreed, hating herself for the lie. "I've had time to think about what really matters. And what's that? Security, stability, being with someone who can take care of me." Each word tasted like poison, but she forced them out. "I'm not strong enough to make it on my own." Daniel's laugh was satisfied, predatory. I always knew you'd come to your senses. See you tomorrow night, sweetheart. After hanging up, Monique sat in Marcus's kitchen, feeling dirty despite the shower she'd taken before the call. I hate this, she said, pretending to be weak when I feel stronger than I ever have. It's almost over, Marcus promised. Tomorrow night, we end this. What if something goes wrong? What if he hurts those girls before we can get to them? Marcus took her hands in his, and she felt the calluses from hours of surveillance work, the steadiness of someone who dedicated his life to seeking justice. Then we live with the consequences, he said. But if we don't try, we definitely live with the guilt. She squeezed his hands, drawing strength from his certainty. Maya better be okay. She will be, and so will you. As she left Marcus's apartment that night, her phone buzzed with a message that made her blood run cold. I know what you're planning. Come alone tomorrow night, or Marcus dies. She walked into that rooftop party knowing it would end two lives, his old one and hers. The St. Regis Atlanta's rooftop gleamed like a jewel against the night sky. String lights created a canopy of stars above the city's most powerful people, and champagne flowed like water while servers in black uniforms moved silently through conversations that shaped George's future. Monique stood at the elevator doors, wearing a bronze dress that caught the light with every breath. Her hair was swept up to show the diamond earrings Daniel had given her for their first anniversary, a reminder of what she was supposed to want, what she was supposed to value. But hidden in her designer clutch was the velvet box containing the USB drive that would destroy him. Daniel spotted her immediately, moving through the crowd with the confidence of a man who believed he'd already won. At 48, he still commanded every room he entered, silver at his temples adding distinction to his handsome face. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored, his smile perfectly calculated. Monique. He kissed her cheek like they were old friends instead of former lovers. You look stunning. Thank you for this, she said, letting her voice carry just enough gratitude to feed his ego. I know it can't be easy, given how things ended. Water under the bridge. His hand found the small of her back, possessive and familiar. What matters is that you're here now. Have you ever walked into a situation knowing everything would change? How did you find the courage? The party was a who's who of Atlanta power. She recognized senators from news programs, judges from newspaper photos, business leaders from magazine covers. All of them smiling and laughing and pretending they didn't know where Daniel's money really came from. Commissioner Hayes was there, the man who'd taken bribes to condemn properties. Detective Morrison, who'd buried missing person reports for teenage girls. Judge Patterson, who dismissed cases against Daniel's associates with suspicious regularity. All of them complicit, all of them about to fall. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel called for attention, tapping his champagne glass with a sterling silver knife. Thank you all for joining us tonight to celebrate Monique's birthday. The crowd turned toward them, faces illuminated by golden light. Camera phones appeared, social media influencers positioning for the perfect shot. The party was being documented from every angle, exactly what she needed. Monique has brought such joy back into my life, Daniel continued, his arm sliding around her waist. She's reminded me what it means to love someone completely. Polite applause. Knowing smiles from women who thought they were witnessing a romantic reconciliation. None of them realized they were about to watch an execution. I want to thank Daniel for his generosity, Monique said, accepting the microphone with steady hands. For showing me that people can change, that forgiveness is possible. More applause. Daniel's smile grew wider, more confident. In fact, she continued, I have a gift for him tonight. Something that represents everything we've built together. She reached in her clutch, fingers finding the velvet box. Around them, guests leaned forward with interest. Camera phones focused on her hands. Daniel has always been so good at surprises, she said, her voice carrying across the rooftop. Tonight, it's my turn. She placed the box on the cocktail table between them, watching his face change as he recognized it. The confidence flickered, replaced by something that might have been fear. Open it, she said softly. Daniel's hands shook as he lifted the lid. His face went white as he stared at the USB drive nestled in black velvet like a deadly jewel. "What is this?" he asked, but his voice suggested he already knew. "Justice," she said, loud enough for the cameras to catch. 3 years of evidence. Financial records, recorded conversations, video documentation of everything you've done to this city and its children. The party fell silent. Glasses stopped moving toward lips. Conversations died mid-sentence. 200 people watched Daniel's empire crumble in real time. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said, but sweat was beading on his forehead. "Jefferson Street, the Williams family, Keisha Williams." Should I continue? His hand moved faster than she expected, connecting with her cheek in a slap that echoed across the rooftop like a gunshot. Her champagne glass exploded against the concrete, drawing gasps from the crowd. But instead of tears, instead of the reaction he expected, Monique laughed. Deep, rich, dangerous. The sound made everyone step backward. It made senators look uncomfortable and judges check their exits. It made every person on that rooftop understand that they were witnessing something far more significant than a domestic dispute. "Daniel," she said, touching her cheek but still smiling. "You always did have a temper. Too bad everyone's recording tonight." She was right. Dozens of phones were already capturing everything, red recording lights blinking like tiny warning signals. Within minutes, the slap would be trending on every social media platform in America. "Happy birthday to me," she said, her voice carrying across the stunned silence. "But tonight, the gift is for the world." When Daniel raised his hand to slap her, time slowed. But this time she was ready. This time, she had the power. The sound of his hand against her cheek echoed across the rooftop, but her laughter echoed louder and longer. The moment stretched like a broken film reel. Daniel's palm connecting with her skin. The crystal champagne flute shattering on concrete. 200 gasps rising into the Atlanta night air like a choir of shock. But Monique's laughter cut through it all. Rich, deep, completely unhinged. She touched her cheek, feeling the sting, but her smile never wavered. Around them, phones were already buzzing with notifications. The video was uploading to Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Within minutes, the hashtag #VelvetBoxRevenge would be trending nationwide. "You always were predictable, Daniel," she said, her voice carrying across the silent rooftop. "Lose control. Hit the woman. Blame everyone else." Senator Williams stepped forward, his political instincts kicking in. "Perhaps we should all step back and—" "No." Monique's voice stopped him cold. "We're not stepping back. We're not pretending this didn't happen. We're not protecting him anymore." She picked up the USB drive from the velvet box, holding it up so every camera could capture it clearly. 3 years of evidence. Bribery, extortion, human trafficking. All the crimes you people have been ignoring while you took his money and attended his parties. What would you do if you had proof that could destroy your abuser? Would you use it? Commissioner Hayes tried to slip toward the elevator, but Monique's voice stopped him. "Going somewhere, Commissioner? Don't you want to see the video of you taking $50,000 to condemn the Jefferson Street properties?" His face went gray. Around the rooftop, other officials began looking uncomfortable, checking their watches, making excuses about early morning meetings. "Judge Patterson," Monique continued, her voice steady and clear. "Should we discuss the cases you dismissed?" The missing person reports that mysteriously disappeared from Detective Morrison's desk. The silence was deafening. 200 of the most powerful people in Georgia stood frozen, realizing their corruption was about to be exposed on every news channel in America. Daniel grabbed her wrist, his fingers digging into her skin hard enough to bruise. "You have no idea what you've just started," he hissed. "They'll come for you now. My associates don't forgive betrayal." Monique smiled, and there was something predatory in her expression that made him step backward. "Let them try." She turned to face the crowd, most of whom were now filming openly. The party had transformed into a press conference, a public execution, a reckoning 3 years in the making. "My name is Monique Davis," she said, her voice carrying across the rooftop, and into phones that would broadcast her words to millions. For 8 months, I was engaged to Daniel Chin. I thought he was a successful businessman. I thought he cared about improving communities. She held up the USB drive again. Instead, I discovered he's been systematically destroying families to steal their homes, bribing officials to look the other way, and worst of all, trafficking teenage girls from the communities he displaces. The crowd erupted. Guests pushed toward the elevators, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal. Reporters who'd been covering the party as society news suddenly realized they were witnessing the story of a year. Daniel's phone was exploding with calls. His lawyer, his business partners, his associates, everyone trying to understand how their carefully constructed empire was collapsing in real time. The FBI already has copies of everything, Monique continued, which was a lie but a convincing one. Every transaction, every recorded conversation, every piece of evidence showing how this city's leadership sold out their own people for money. Security? Daniel shouted, but the security guards were nowhere to be found. Marcus had been busy during the party. Social media notifications were coming so fast that phones couldn't keep up. Hashtag slap heard around the world. Hashtag Atlanta corruption. Hashtag Velvet Box Justice. The videos were being shared faster than Daniel's public relations team could even begin to control them. Mrs. Patterson, the judge's wife, pushed past other guests toward the elevator. "We're leaving. Now." But Monique wasn't finished. "Before you all run away, you should know something else. This isn't just about Atlanta. Daniel's operation spans multiple states. The evidence includes connections to trafficking networks in Charlotte, Birmingham, Jacksonville, and Nashville. More phones buzzing, more shocked faces, more people realizing their comfortable world of willful ignorance was about to collapse. "Monique, stop," Daniel pleaded, but his voice cracked with desperation. "We can work this out. Whatever you want, money, property, anything. I want those girls back," she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "I want Keisha Williams found alive. I want my sister Maya returned safely. I want every family you destroyed to get justice." "Your sister?" Daniel's face went white. "How do you know about Maya? About the warehouse near the airport? About all of it?" Monique's smile was ice cold. "You really thought I was just the helpless little nurse, didn't you? Too stupid to figure out what you were doing. Too weak to fight back." She walked closer to him, close enough that only he could hear her next words. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." As Monique walked toward the elevator, Daniel grabbed her wrist. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "They'll come for you now." Her smile didn't waver. "Let them try." In the age of social media, revenge doesn't simmer. It explodes across every screen, every timeline, every news feed in America. By the time Monique reached the lobby of the St. Regis, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Text messages, missed calls, social media notifications coming so fast the screen couldn't keep up. The video of Daniel slapping her was already approaching 1 million views on TikTok alone. CNN was calling. Fox News, NBC, local Atlanta stations, national podcasters, international news outlets picking up the story about American corruption going viral in real time. "Holy shit," the hotel desk clerk whispered, staring at his phone. "Is that you? You're like everywhere right now." Monique glanced at his screen. The headline read, "Real estate mogul's ex-fiancé exposes corruption at birthday party gone wrong." Below it, the video played on repeat, Daniel's hand connecting with her cheek, her laughter, the USB drive reveal. Have you ever seen justice go viral? What happens when the internet decides who's right? Her Uber driver recognized her immediately. "Ma'am, you're that lady from the party. The one who stood up to that rich dude. My daughter just sent me the video. It's got like 2 million shares already." 2 million. In less than an hour. The drive to Marcus's apartment felt surreal. Every red light gave her time to scroll through social media, watching her life become a global phenomenon. Hashtag Velvet Box Revenge was trending in 12 countries. The hashtag Find Maya was gaining momentum as users shared photos of missing girls, demanding answers about trafficking operations. Marcus was waiting for her in his parking lot, his expression grim despite their apparent victory. "We need to go," he said, opening her car door. "Now." "What's wrong?" "The party worked perfectly." Daniel's finished. "That's the problem." Marcus helped her out of the car, his eyes scanning the parking lot for threats. When you destroy someone with Daniel's connections, they don't just roll over and accept defeat. They climbed the stairs to his apartment quickly, but something felt wrong. The hallway was too quiet, the shadows too deep. Marcus's door was ajar. "Stay behind me," he whispered, pulling a gun from his jacket. The apartment had been destroyed. Furniture overturned, electronics smashed, surveillance photos scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. Someone had been looking for something specific, and they'd been willing to tear apart everything to find it. "The backup drives," Marcus said, moving toward his bedroom. "If they got the backup drives..." The sound from the kitchen made them both freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, threatening. "I wouldn't worry about the drives," a voice called out. Deep, unfamiliar, dangerous. "We got what we came for." Three men in expensive suits emerged from different rooms, moving with the practiced efficiency of professionals. Not street thugs or hired muscle. These were corporate soldiers, the kind of people who made problems disappear permanently. "Miss Davis," the lead man said, his voice polite but deadly. "You've caused quite a stir tonight. Who are you?" "Let's just say we represent interests that extend far beyond Mr. Chen's little operation." He adjusted his tie with manicured fingers. "Your boyfriend here has been very thorough in his investigation. Unfortunately for both of you, some secrets are too valuable to let walk out the door." Marcus raised his gun, but the man just smiled. "I wouldn't." "Check your phone, Miss Davis." With trembling fingers, Monique opened her text messages. A video file was waiting, sent from an unknown number. The video showed Maya, bound to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. She was alive but terrified, tears streaming down her face as someone off-camera spoke in a voice Monique recognized. "Daniel, your sister is safe for now," Daniel's voice said through the phone speaker. "But her continued well-being depends entirely on your cooperation. You have 30 minutes to get to the warehouse with the original drive and any copies you've made. Come alone or Maya dies." The men in suits were already moving toward the door. 30 minutes, Miss Davis. The warehouse at 4247 Industrial Boulevard. And remember, we'll know if you bring backup. After they left, Marcus grabbed her shoulders. "It's a trap. You know it's a trap." "I know." Monique's voice was steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "But she's my sister. They'll kill you both anyway. These aren't people who leave witnesses." "Maybe." She picked up the scattered photos from his floor, images of Daniel's victims, girls who looked like Maya, like herself, like every woman who'd ever trusted the wrong man. "But I'm not abandoning her like everyone abandoned these girls." Marcus was already reaching for his backup weapon, a smaller pistol hidden in his ankle holster. "Then we do this together." "No, you heard them. They'll know if I bring backup." "I don't care." "Ido." Monique took his face in her hands, memorizing the determined set of his jaw, the fierce protectiveness in his dark eyes. "Maya is my responsibility. If something happens to me, you keep fighting. You make sure all of this matters." "Monique, promise me." Before he could answer, her phone buzzed with another message. More video of Maya, this time showing men in the background loading weapons, preparing for something that looked final. 25 minutes. The federal agents at her door weren't there to arrest Daniel. They were there to protect her. "Ma'am," the lead agent said, "someone put a price on your head." She'd exposed a monster, but monsters have friends, and some of them wore badges, robes, and suits that cost more than most people's cars. The FBI safe house was a nondescript ranch home in Decatur, surrounded by agents who'd appeared within minutes of the warehouse threat. Agent Sarah Kim, a serious woman in her 40s, sat across from Monique at a kitchen table covered with surveillance photos and federal documents. "The good news is that your video has created enough public pressure to force action," Agent Kim said. "The Attorney General's office is opening a federal investigation into Daniel Chen's operation and everyone connected to it." "What's the bad news?" "The bad news is that you've made enemies of some very powerful people. The price on your head is $5 million. Professional hit, no questions asked. Monique stared at the photos spread across the table. Daniel meeting with men she didn't recognize, faces that looked like they belonged in corporate boardrooms rather than criminal enterprises. Who are these people? A consortium of investors who've been laundering money through Daniel's real estate deals for years. Russian oligarchs, cartel money, corrupt politicians from multiple states. Agent Kim pointed to different faces. Your boyfriend stumbled onto something much bigger than local corruption. How do you fight corruption when it reaches the highest levels? Who do you trust when the system is broken? Marcus sat beside her, his face grim as he studied the photos. The FBI had found him at his destroyed apartment, bringing him to the safe house when they realized the scope of the threat. Maya, Monique asked, any word about my sister? We have teams moving on 3 locations where intelligence suggests they might be holding hostages. But these people are professionals. They've had years to perfect their operations. Agent Kim's phone buzzed with an urgent message. Her expression darkened as she read it. What is it? Marcus asked. Commissioner Hayes was found dead in his car an hour ago. Apparent suicide, but the timing is suspicious. She looked up from her phone. They're cleaning house, eliminating anyone who might testify. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of agents moving through the house. Monique felt the weight of what she'd started. Not just Daniel's destruction, but a war against people who killed witnesses as casually as most people fired employees. Judge Patterson's missing too, Agent Kim continued. His wife found a note saying he was going fishing, but his boat is still at the marina. They're all going to die, aren't they? Monique said, everyone who took Daniel's money. Some will cooperate in exchange for protection. Others, Agent Kim shrugged. Let's just say this investigation has become very expensive for certain people. Monique's phone, which the FBI had cleared for monitoring, rang with Daniel's number. Agent Kim nodded, signaling her to answer while tech agents recorded everything. Hello, Daniel. Monique. His voice sounded different, strained, desperate. Nothing like the confident businessman who'd slapped her 12 hours earlier. We need to talk. I think we've said everything we need to say. No, you don't understand. They're going to kill me too. His voice cracked with genuine terror. The people I work for, they don't tolerate failures. What you did tonight, it wasn't just about me. You destroyed a network worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Agent Kim was frantically signaling tech agents to trace the call, keep him talking. Where are you, Daniel? Moving. Always moving now. But listen to me. Your sister, she's not at the warehouse anymore. They moved her when the FBI started closing in. Where is she? I don't know. I swear I don't know. They cut me out of operations the minute your video went viral. His breathing was ragged, like he was running. But there's something else. Something worse. What? The men who took her, they're not planning to use her for trafficking. She's leverage, but only until they find you. Once they get what they want from you, she becomes a liability. The line went dead. Agent Kim immediately started barking orders to her team. Trace that call. Check every cell tower between here and downtown. And give me a full tactical team ready for deployment. What are we deploying for? Marcus asked. Daniel Chun is either very scared or very smart. Either way, he just told us that Maya Davis is running out of time. Monique stood up from the kitchen table, suddenly feeling trapped by the safe house walls. I need air. Ma'am, you can't leave the property. I'm not leaving. I just need to think. The backyard was small and fenced, with agents positioned at every corner. The October night was crisp, stars visible despite the suburban light pollution. Monique sat on the back steps, trying to process how her simple plan for justice had turned into a federal investigation and multiple death threats. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your sister says hello. The attached photo showed Maya in what looked like a different location. Cleaner, more residential. She was still tied up, but she appeared unharmed. In the background, Monique could see details that might help identify the location. A distinctive light fixture, wood paneling, what looked like a basement or finished garage. Another text. Daniel told us about your federal friends. Time for new rules. Then, tomorrow, 6 p.m., Piedmont Park. Come alone with all evidence, or Maya dies. No FBI, no backup, no tricks. We'll know if you try to be clever. Agent Kim appeared beside her as she was reading the messages. They're escalating. They want to meet. Absolutely not. It's suicide. Maybe. Monique showed her the photo of Maya. But it's also the only chance my sister has. We can set up surveillance, have teams positioned around the park. They'll know. These people have been one step ahead of everyone for years. Monique looked up at the stars, remembering nights when she and Maya were kids, making wishes on stars they could barely see through Charlotte's city lights. I have to do this alone. I won't let you, Marcus said, joining them on the steps. You can't stop me. Actually, I can. Agent Kim's voice was firm. You're under federal protection. That means you don't get to make decisions that compromise ongoing investigations. Then you're not protecting me. You're imprisoning me. Monique stood up, facing both of them. My sister is going to die because I decided to seek justice. That's not protection. That's just another kind of cage. The phone call came at 3 a.m. Daniel's voice was different, broken. They're going to kill me, Monique. The same people who want you dead. We have to work together now. The man who destroyed her life was now the only one who could save it, if she could trust him one last time. The abandoned textile warehouse sat in an industrial district that Atlanta had forgotten, surrounded by rusted chain-link fences and broken promises of urban renewal. Monique arrived at dawn, as instructed by Daniel's increasingly desperate phone calls. The FBI was tracking her location, but had agreed to stay back for now. Daniel's Mercedes was already there, parked behind a loading dock where nobody would see it from the street. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained, his eyes darting constantly toward the shadows. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion and fear. "I'm not here for you. I'm here for Maya. I know." He pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. "Everything I have left. Financial records they don't know I copied. Communications with people at the highest levels. Names, dates, bank account numbers. Could you work with someone who hurt you to save innocent lives? Where do you draw the line?" Monique took the folder but didn't open it. "Why should I trust anything you give me? You've lied about everything else. Because I'm dead either way." Daniel's laugh was bitter, empty. "The moment your video went viral, I became a liability. They've already killed 3 commissioners, 2 judges, and a police captain. I'm next on the list." "Good. Monique, please." He grabbed her arm, but gently this time, like he was asking for mercy instead of demanding obedience. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did to you, to those families, to those girls was unforgivable. But Maya doesn't deserve to die for my sins." She looked at his face, really looked at him for the first time in months. Underneath the fear and desperation, she could see traces of the man she'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. Before power corrupted him, before greed consumed him, before he became a monster wearing her lover's face. Where is she? That's the problem. They moved her again after you involved the FBI. My contacts have gone dark. My assets are frozen. My security team abandoned me. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, leaving it even more disheveled. "I have one source left, but she'll only talk to you." "Who?" "Dr. Patricia Willis. She runs a private medical practice that my associates have been using to provide health care for the girls they traffic. She never wanted to be involved, but they threatened her family." Monique remembered the name from Marcus's files. Dr. Willis had been flagged as suspicious, but never directly connected to the trafficking operation. She knows where Maya is. She knows the system, how they move people, where they take them for medical attention, which locations they use for long-term holding. Daniel's phone buzzed with an urgent message, making him flinch. "But we have to move fast. My source says they're planning to relocate all the girls tomorrow night." "Relocate where?" "Out of the country. A ship leaving from Savannah, heading to buyers in Eastern Europe." His voice broke slightly. "Once they're on that ship, we'll never find them." The weight of that reality settled over them like a shroud. Not just Maya, but dozens of girls whose families were probably still filing missing person reports that would never be investigated properly. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Dr. Willis won't meet with me. I'm too hot now, too dangerous to be around. But she might meet with you, especially if you approach her as someone trying to save your sister." "And then what?" "Even if we find Maya, these people have resources we can't compete with. Professional killers, corrupt officials, unlimited money. That's where this comes in." Daniel held up a small device that looked like a modified cell phone. Satellite transmitter, military grade, impossible to jam or trace. "I was supposed to use it to coordinate the ship departure, but instead we can use it to call in federal raids on every location simultaneously. The FBI already knows about the operation. They know pieces. This gives them everything: real-time locations, communication frequencies, operational schedules." Daniel's eyes burned with something that might have been redemption. One coordinated strike could take down the entire network. A car engine echoed through the warehouse district, growing louder. Daniel immediately moved toward the shadows, pulling Monique with him. "They found us," he whispered. Two black SUVs with tinted windows pulled into the parking lot, moving with the precise coordination of military units. Men in tactical gear emerged, spreading out to surround the warehouse. "Is there another way out?" Monique asked. "Loading tunnel that connects to the storm drains." Daniel was already moving toward the back of the building. "But we need to move now." As they ran through the abandoned warehouse, jumping over broken machinery and dodging hanging cables, Monique realized how completely her world had changed. 6 months ago, her biggest worry was whether to accept Daniel's marriage proposal. Now she was running from professional killers through abandoned buildings, trying to save her sister from human traffickers. The loading tunnel was narrow and dark, filled with the sound of dripping water and their own ragged breathing. Behind them, they could hear boots on concrete, voices coordinating a search. "Dr. Willis has a clinic in Virginia Highland," Daniel said as they crawled through the darkness. "If we can get there." Gunshots erupted behind them, bullets ricocheting off concrete walls. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, but it also meant their pursuers weren't trying to take them alive anymore. They emerged from the storm drain 6 blocks away, covered in mud and debris but alive. Daniel's Mercedes was gone, probably seized or destroyed, leaving them stranded in an industrial wasteland with killers hunting them. "Now what?" Monique asked. Daniel pulled out the satellite transmitter, checking its signal strength. "Now we find out if redemption is really possible." As Daniel handed over the final files, gunshots erupted outside the warehouse. "They found us," he whispered. But when Marcus burst through the door, he wasn't coming to rescue them. He was running from the same killers. A year later, she stood in a courtroom watching powerful men in handcuffs, knowing that sometimes the best revenge is living long enough to see justice served. The federal courthouse in downtown Atlanta buzzed with activity as the final day of the Chun conspiracy trial began. News vans lined the street, reporters jockeying for position, protesters holding signs demanding justice for trafficking victims. It had been 18 months since the rooftop party that changed everything. Monique sat in the gallery, wearing a simple blue dress that belonged to the woman she'd become. Not the society fiancée she'd pretended to be, not the broken victim she'd feared becoming, but someone stronger who'd emerged from the fire of that night. Beside her sat Maya, alive and healing, though the shadows in her eyes suggested the recovery would take years. She'd been found during the coordinated FBI raids that followed Daniel's final cooperation, rescued along with 23 other girls from shipping container at the port of Savannah. The defendant, Daniel Chun, having been found guilty on all counts of conspiracy, racketeering, human trafficking, and bribery, will be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The gavel fell with finality that echoed through the packed courtroom. Daniel stood between his lawyers, wearing an orange jumpsuit that was a far cry from his custom suits. He'd aged dramatically during the trial, his hair gone completely gray, his face gone from the stress of knowing that cooperation with prosecutors was the only thing keeping him alive in federal prison. He turned slightly, catching Monique's eye for just a moment. She saw something that might have been gratitude mixed with regret. Acknowledgement that her decision to expose him had ultimately saved more lives than it destroyed, including his own. What does real victory look like? Is it revenge, or is it building something better from the ashes? Marcus squeezed her hand as they watched Daniel being led away in handcuffs. 18 months of trials, investigations, and federal protection had brought them closer together in ways that danger and shared purpose often do. Their relationship had been forged in fire, built on truth instead of illusion. Judge Patterson got 15 years, he said quietly. Commissioner Hayes' estate is being sued by every family he helped displace. Detective Morrison flipped and testified against the whole network in exchange for witness protection. The courtroom was clearing now, but Monique remained seated, watching the place where Daniel had stood. The man who'd once controlled her life, who'd shaped her dreams and nearly destroyed her future, was now just another federal prisoner whose name would fade from headlines within a week. Any regrets? Maya asked, her voice still soft but stronger than it had been months ago. No, Monique said, and meant it. The only regret would have been staying silent. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded them as they tried to reach their car. Microphones and cameras pushed forward, voices shouting questions about the trial, the investigation, the foundation Monique had started with money from the federal reward program. Miss Davis, how does it feel to see Daniel Chin sentenced? What message do you have for other trafficking victims? Are you planning to continue your advocacy work? Monique paused at the courthouse steps, looking out at the crowd of reporters, supporters, and curious onlookers. A year and a half ago, she'd been a nurse working night shifts to pay off student loans. Today, she was the face of a movement that had exposed corruption reaching the highest levels of Georgia government. Justice isn't about revenge, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the autumn air. It's about making sure this never happens to anyone else's sister, anyone else's daughter, anyone else's family. The crowd quieted, cameras focusing on her face as she continued. Daniel Chun was just one man in a network that spans multiple states and destroys thousands of lives. Until we address the systems that allow trafficking to flourish, until we hold accountable every official who takes money to look the other way, the work isn't finished. What's next for you? Monique looked at Marcus, at Maya, at the city where she'd lost herself and found something stronger. We're opening our third safe house next month. We're training law enforcement agencies across the Southeast to recognize trafficking operations. And we're making sure that every girl who escapes has a place to heal and rebuild. That evening, they returned to the Virginia Highland house they now called home, a renovated Victorian that served as both residence and headquarters for the Maya Davis Foundation for Trafficking Survivors. Named after her sister, funded by federal rewards and private donations, it had become exactly what Daniel's fake charity had pretended to be. Marcus found her on the front porch as the sun set over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. He carried 2 cups of coffee, settling beside her on the swing they'd installed last spring. Remember when your biggest problem was whether to marry a rich guy? He said, handing her a cup. Seems like a different lifetime. She leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of someone who'd chosen to stay through every dangerous moment. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just said I'd do that day. You'd have spent your life wondering who you could have become, and you'd still be investigating cases alone, and Maya would still be missing. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their neighborhood come alive with evening routines. Families returning from work, children playing in yards, the simple rhythms of communities that felt safe because people like them fought to keep them that way. Monique's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Willis, who now ran medical services for all their safe houses. New arrival tonight. 16 years old, escaped from a trafficking ring in Birmingham. She's asking for you specifically. Another girl. Another family destroyed by men who saw human beings as merchandise. Another chance to prove that rescue was possible, that healing could happen, that the cycle could be broken. I have to go, she said, but Marcus was already standing. We have to go, he corrected. Maya appeared in the doorway, car keys in her hand. At 24, she'd become the foundation's victim advocate, using her own experience to help other survivors navigate the long road to recovery. "Ready?" she asked. Monique looked at her sister, at Marcus, at the house that had become a beacon for women escaping situations that once seemed hopeless. She thought about the USB drive that had started everything, the velvet box that had ended Daniel's empire, the choice to speak truth instead of accepting comfortable lies. "Ready," she said, as they drove through Atlanta toward the safe house. Monique reflected on how completely her life had changed. The woman who'd once been afraid to leave a toxic relationship was now helping other women escape far worse situations. The nurse who'd worked night shifts to survive was now running an organization that operated across multiple states. The girl who'd learned to be grateful for scraps was now ensuring that others never had to settle for less than dignity. At the safe house, a teenage girl with haunted eyes and defensive posture sat in the intake room, surrounded by social workers and medical staff. She looked up when Monique entered, and something in her expression softened slightly. "Are you the one?" she asked. "The one who took down that rich guy?" "I'm Monique, and you're safe now. Will it get better?" Monique knelt beside the girl's chair, remembering her own questions about whether healing was possible, whether trust could be rebuilt, whether victims could become survivors and survivors could become advocates. "It gets different," she said honestly, "and different can be beautiful. So what would you do if someone saw your worth before you believed in it yourself? Would you run? Or would you build something that lasts?" If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who refuse to stay silent. Tell me in the comments what aspect of Monique's journey resonated most with you. Remember, the most powerful love doesn't rescue you from your life. It recognizes the strength that's been there all along. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's building something so beautiful from the ashes that their destruction becomes irrelevant. The most important battles aren't fought for ourselves. They're fought for the people who come after us, so they never have to fight the same wars we did. Keep fighting, keep building, keep believing that justice is possible, even when the system seems rigged against you. Because sometimes, one person willing to tell the truth can bring down an entire empire of lies. What empire will you challenge next?